Hey everybody, Dan here, and welcome to another desktop lecture. We're on week number 13. This is the module about the internet. And before I get started on that, I just want to address a few things about the last module, or actually the module before that. We were talking about Robert Noyce, and I think there are some good points to think about. You know, as we talk about successful business people and inventors, we talked about Noyce, and then we talked about Steve Jobs, and really the difference between those two. And I think, as many of you talked about in your discussion post, that Noyce may be one of the most important inventors ever, or at least in modern business history. But at the same time, since he invented something that's used behind the scenes, he wasn't as well known as someone like Edison or someone like Ford, perhaps. So I thought you brought up some good points there, and it's something to think about as we move forward with inventors and inventions, especially getting into the modern era, because there's so many things like the cell phone. Who invented the cell phone? Who invented the LED light? A lot of these things are inventors who are either not well known, or the inventions themselves, such as a cell phone, were the result of a lot of collaboration between people. And that gives us a good entry into talking about the internet, because the internet itself, and again, make sure we can distinguish between the internet and the World Wide Web, and I'll explain that. But the internet itself was really not invented by one person. It was really a collaboration or an open source project that a lot of people contributed to. As you go through and go through some of the readings or videos for this module, you'll learn about names like Ray Tomlinson, who really was the inventor of email, and perhaps more important, Tim Berners-Lee, who's really the inventor of the World Wide Web, which is different than the internet, of course, and I'll talk about that a little more as we're moving forward. But history of the internet is really difficult, and if you look on the internet or on the World Wide Web, and you go to maybe YouTube and try to find a history of the internet, you'll see that most of them are incomplete. They don't go up to 2017, and it reflects the nature of how the web is changing every day, and how the devices that we use to access the web, such as mobile, our cell phones, have had a big impact on the web as well. So the point is that a history of the internet is really difficult to nail down, but the early stuff we can think about. So basically, the big points for this module, when we think about the history of the internet, one of the most important things is that it came out of something called ARPA, ARPA, the ARPANET, and the ARPANET was originally funded by the Department of Defense. So that's the original idea of a network of computers, and some people attribute it to going back to the Cold War. This idea that if there was a nuclear attack on the U.S., there should be a network in place that was flexible enough to not depend upon one main trunk line or one main means of communication, a network with many nodes, and that was the original vision of ARPANET. Now, ARPANET turned into the internet as we know it, at least conceptually, but it again wasn't the brainchild of one person. There were certain protocols like TCP/IP, for example, and that's an engineering protocol for the way that information is distributed on the internet. The internet and the way it works is really fascinating, because it involves this idea of data sent in little packets that is sent out via servers and reassembled on your computer or on your phone. So when you're streaming a Netflix video, or when you receive an email, it's not one big chunk of information going down the pipeline or the wires. It's little packets of information that are disassembled and reassembled on your device. So it's really brilliant, and it's quite fascinating on how it works. And the cool thing is, those packets, they might not all travel the same route. So when you're watching a Netflix movie, some of those packets might be going through Chicago from a server farm in Kansas, and others might be going through Nashville from a different server farm, all at the same time. So it's complicated, but at the same time, it's brilliant in the way it works, and it's the reason it works so well, because it's distributed under multiple nodes when you're transmitting or receiving information. But we're not going to get really into the technical aspect of it. Just know that the internet itself again, is really an open source, or was originally an open source project with many contributors. Now, when we talk about the internet and we talk about the web interchangeably, it's important to know that they're really not interchangeable technically. So the internet refers to the vast networks of computers that are hooked together. And those are servers and computers all over the world, and smart devices as well. The World Wide Web in itself is a protocol that runs on top of the internet. And so the World Wide Web, the www, that you put into a web address, really is referring to a separate network that's built on top of the internet. And the World Wide Web was invented in 1990/1991, around the end of 1990, by Tim Berners-Lee. And he was a European computer scientist working out of CERN, which is actually a European research agency. It's actually the nuclear agency in Europe. You've heard of the Large Hadron Collider. CERN are the people that run the Large Hadron Collider. So the World Wide Web itself, that protocol, the HTTP:///www, that's not an American invention. That was invented by Tim Berners-Lee and CERN, and that was gifted, if you will, to the public as an open source protocol. So it was never patented, it was never protected, it was never regulated in any way by CERN, the inventors of it. And the only way that the World Wide Web could really work was with the invention of a browser. And the first browser was really, the first viable browser was really a Netscape browser, and that was invented at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. So again, that was a Mark Andreessen invention, and again, it shows you how many people contributed to come up with what we know as today as the World Wide Web. So that's one of the questions on the quiz this week. You know, are the internet and the World Wide Web the same thing? And the answer is no, they're not. The World Wide Web is a protocol that runs on top of the internet, and that's really more than trivial information, especially if you're into engineering. You should know the difference between the two things. The web itself, the World Wide Web itself, everything we're familiar with as far as video and especially hyperlinks, those are all web technologies that are not inherent to the raw internet itself, and those are all part of Tim Berners-Lee's invention, especially hyperlinks from page to page, and also the idea that HTML, which is what web pages are created on top of, defines what a page looks like. And now there are a lot of different technologies. It used to be that static HTML pages were what you saw when you surfed the web, but now most of the pages you see are assembled in real time. So behind the scenes, using technologies and protocols such as cascading style sheets, using active server pages, that sort of thing. HTML is really assembled on your desktop or on your phone screen when you call for it with dynamic content. So it's really changed a lot over the years, and HTML has gone through different iterations as well. Right now we're working on HTML5, which gives you a much smoother internet experience when it comes to videos, graphics, that sort of thing. So again, won't get into the technical part of it too much. The other thing I want to talk about when we talk about the internet is really this notion of technological determinism. So if there are any history majors out there, you might have heard of this term technological determinism at some point in time. And it's really this notion where people say that technology changes society. And there's really a subtle distinction when it comes to technological determinism and inventions, that technology in itself doesn't really change society, but society adopts what technologies it chooses to use. And so certainly the internet has changed society, but it's only because society has adopted the internet as a channel of communications that is convenient and that works for them. Consider the telephone. The telephone was invented in 1876, but it wasn't really widely adopted until after the 1900s. It wasn't adopted anywhere nearly as quick as the internet is. So just keep that in mind if you ever run across that idea of technological determinism. It's really society that chooses what technologies they adopt, and not the technologies themselves that change society. It's just a little subtle change in the agency of the technology and the people and what drives what. So keep that in mind. The other thing we need to talk about really is that there are 3 or 4 different videos that you're going to watch this week, and they're all very short, and they all give you little bits and pieces of the internet and the history of the internet. You don't need to remember all of these inventors' names, but the one thing you should remember is you should remember Tim Berners-Lee. He's important. You should also know that the internet was born out of ARPANET, as I said originally, so it was originally funded by the US government. It's interesting because when you think about someone like RCA, who we read about, those original RCA patents, those original technology patents, were all owned by the US government, and eventually when Radio Corporation of America was formed under David Sarnoff, that the government more or less licensed or gifted these patents, and it's the same with the railroad. The original Transcontinental Railroad in 1869, the easement or the land to build that railroad was all given to the railroad companies by the U.S. government. So it's this idea that government funding, government projects sometimes does drive major innovation, and so those people today who are on the political spectrum who want everything developed privately without government help, historically we see that government help up front really leads to these great inventions or these great technologies such as the internet, such as the railroad. And so it's another thing to keep in mind, and that is a question on the quiz for this week. So other than that, just go ahead and watch the videos that are in the module. There's a real short reading about the difference between the internet and the World Wide Web, just so you know that. Also know that the internet is really new. So 1991 for the World Wide Web, so it hasn't been around that long. And I think you know that it's had a major impact not only on business but also on education, because you're watching this video over the web right now. So if you have any questions about it, let me know. Next week we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to look at an interview of Elon Musk, the person who is behind Tesla and many other projects, and we're going to talk about some technologies and how history is going to see this era moving forward. So that's it for this week. Have a safe week and take care. Bye-bye.